Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Jeremy. Doing good. Lots of awesome news in the past 3 weeks in the Xbox realm. How about you, man? Hanging in there?
Barely, by by a thread. So, as people may not know or may know, I've been ill for 3 weeks now. Still ill, chest infection. It's horrible. I'll put it like this: like a lot of a chest infection isn't actually that like common. Um, but when you get it, oh, you feel it. It's like the flu times a million. It's awful. My chest hurts. There's been blood and other stuff, but it is what it is. Pushing on with it. Although I will say this for people that do get it, go to the doctors immediately. Don't do what I've done. Don't put it off and just try and medicate yourself. It's not the best way to go about it. But anyway, we're finally here to talk about gaming and stuff. Finally to get back to stuff because, like, after the last episode, about 6 hours after the podcast finished, that's when all the Xbox leaks happened. So the Xbox Series X digital, the new Xbox controller, and the myriad of unannounced first-party Xbox games, literally hours after the last show. And then I got hit by this. Well, we're back. We have a lot to talk about. And the best part is the ABK stuff, it's all over. It's done. Obviously, we're going to talk about.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, finally, after 20 months, 20 of the longest months in the history of time, it's finally over. And obviously, we're going to be talking about all that stuff later in the show. But before all that, Logan, have you been playing anything interesting the past 3 weeks?
Yeah, the last few weeks I went on a brief binge for retro 90s FPS, and like I played through the Quake games and beat all those. I beat Quake 1 and 2 remastered and all the expansions and stuff for those. Um Tried Chasm a little bit. I kind of enjoy it. It's a little more janky than Quake, but I'm enjoying it. Played some Turok, and then with Alan Wake 2's release imminent, I figured, you know what? Now's a good time to get a crash course refresher because I had played Alan Wake like a long, long time ago, but it had been a hot minute. So I played through Remastered, beat it and its expansions, beat American Nightmare, and now I'm about to start Control, plow through it, and the Alan Wake Experience expansion for it, and then I'll be ready for the second one. How about you, man? What you been up to?
Other than, being sick means be in bed and play games. So, Starfield, lots of Starfield. I was offered a review code and I decided against it because normally when you get a review code, you have to immediately basically make content for it. But the way I go through games, I take my time. I like to enjoy it. I don't like to rush through games. I think that too many people in the modern age rush through games, right? So I decided just to take my time with it, and I'm still playing it. I love the exploration. As people may know, I'm obsessed with Mass Effect. So like just walking around planets, you know, going into bases, doing my own thing, I just love. And the funny thing is, like, I've still got like a billion side quests to do. Like, there's so much to do in that game. Because you take something like Skyrim or like Oblivion, Fallout, or whatever. The bulk of the content is side quests and exploration. And in this, you have all these procedurally generated worlds with all these unique buildings and stuff, and like some moons and planets have these sort of, I want to say, defense towers or information towers where there's multiple floors. They basically act like little bases, and I spent countless hours just exploring. And other than that, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Mirage, and I have to say, I am beyond impressed with that game. That game, I've had a smile on my face the entire time while playing that. It's one of the best games of the year. So, like, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I tried playing some Alan Wake to get ready for the sequel, but again, I've just been really ill. I have been playing the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 beta. I'm really impressed. Like, Logan, did you play that at all? Because it wasn't really live for much time on Xbox anyway.
I haven't jumped in yet, but I've heard good things so far.
You know what? I'll get straight into the impressions because it's big stuff. So, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, it is superb, right? It has the movement you have of Modern Warfare 2, but this game, it has all of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 2009's maps. So you have Rust
Ooh.
and High Rise. Like those were two of my favorite maps back in the day. And if everyone knows, like back in the day, you had to 1v1 people on Rust. That was the thing. I spent countless hours back in the day just playing private matches with my mates. And, well, this beta, it had a playlist that was like, I think it was like 6v6 on Rust. Absolute mayhem, chaos. And as someone that doesn't play multiplayer anymore, like I'd say 99% single player gamer. Like I like my RPGs, all that stuff. But like this, just having those maps, having that nostalgia of 2009 back, has been incredible. Like, granted, I can't fly around the map. Like, you know when you see those clips on Twitter of people playing COD in like the modern style, where they slide all over the
Yeah,
place.
the like chipmunks
Yeah,
and like just crazy ninja kicks across the map, no scope 360, just like madness. Yeah.
yeah, and people do this thing now where they press Y to like sort of change weapons quick, and I don't know what advantage it does for people, but it looks stupid. Well, I play like a normal person, and it's just been great fun. And the thing is, they aren't really altered that much. So Rust, you can go higher on the tower, which is pretty cool. An alternate route through the bottom of the tower. But like when I played High Rise, like with the helicopter pad and all that stuff, it's the exact same map. You can jump over to the crane and get onto the roof. All that stuff, like all that stuff's still there. So people might look at this thinking, well, it's recycled content, but I have to be honest. I think Call of Duty has had some pretty bad maps over the past few years, like really bad maps. So if you take this year and it's meant to have like that old school feel, they just got all the maps from one of the best games ever. So I have to say, like, I'm really impressed. I am. And you can tell this was originally going to be a massive premium expansion pack, right? Like, everyone knows that the cat's out of the bag. But Activision decided to go and charge it as a full new game. Everyone on Earth knows that now. And you know what? After playing it, I loved it. Like, I had a smile on my face the whole time. And I think if people have been outside of COD for as long as I have, they might want to get back into this because those maps are just so good. Like, Logan, you played Modern Warfare 2 back in the day, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Love that game.
Yeah, so, like, those maps were great. Like, I don't know if anyone had any problem with those maps back in the day, but, like, they were just so much fun. And they don't really seem like they've, like, messed them up at all because that's always the worry with something. If something gets remade, there's always something people can mess up, right? Like, we'll be talking about Dead Space in a bit. The biggest worry about that game was would they mess up, like, the story, the progression, the world, anything about it, but they made everything great. And I have to say, like, Modern Warfare 2 beta, it wasn't live long on Xbox because of the whole exclusivity thing. Sony has, I think they had the beta a week early. But outside of that, it was fantastic. I can't wait to play it. Do you think you'll be picking up the new Call of Duty at all?
Yeah, I will.
Because like it's good, like it's really good. The new game also has an open world zombies mode. It has open world
Oh
maps in the
heck yeah,
campaign.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so like it sounds like they've really added a lot. And yeah, Call of Duty this year, I honestly think Call of Duty. I hate saying this, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 2023. Um, I think it's potentially going to be the best selling Call of Duty in probably the past 10 years. Just because of how good the maps are, how good it plays, and all that stuff. Really good stuff. And you know what? Let's jump into Assassin's Creed because that game, oof, that game is incredible. Like, look, I'm guessing you haven't played Mirage, right?
I haven't yet. Like after I put well over 100 plus hours into Starfield and started a new game plus. I did that thing we've talked about on here before where I kind of needed a little palate cleanser, so I
Yeah.
went to some older FPS and then starting to get through to Alan Wake 2. So that's what I've been up to.
Yeah, I put it like this: like I rant about all sorts on the channel and like the podcast. And the thing is, Assassin's Creed for me is one of my favorite franchises. I talk about Mass Effect probably every 5 minutes. Like, let's be realistic. I talk about that
It's
franchise a
on
lot.
sale.
Yeah, like I had a post ready to go on my draft, but that's going out in a bit. But like Mass Effect is just, it's my favorite franchise. But Assassin's Creed, I love that franchise. But to me, it was always about assassins and Templars, and it hasn't been like that for a very long time. When the developers changed that you could climb anything, they did that in Odyssey, and Odyssey's a great game, like fantastic game. But if you make it so you can climb any object, that means there's nothing in the world that's an obstacle anymore. So they effectively made half of the game, which Assassin's Creed was also known for its like assassinations and climbing towers and climbing puzzles, and they essentially wiped away half the game when they made it so you can climb everything. We no longer got climbing puzzles and all that stuff. And with this, like, excuse me, like everyone knows that Mirage was originally going to be a massive expansion for Valhalla. Um, but after playing it, you can tell why they made it its own game. You really can. It is back to roots, proper full on Assassin's Creed. You play it as an assassin. You go after these enemies called, I think they're called the Ancient Ones. They're basically Templars in all but name. But like, it's just good to have a map that's an entire city again, right? Where for the past 3 games, there's been like little tiny cities, but most of the missions have taken place in the open world environment where there's like animals and all that stuff, and it's just been really grindy. And it's good to have a game in this franchise it's about you assassinating targets. Like that's literally what the game's about. It feels like they've taken the best part of Assassin's Creed 2 and slapped it in the new engine, gave it modern gameplay, and said, "Hey, have some nostalgia, but it's also new." And like this is the I believe it's called Ubisoft Bordeaux. This is their first game, their first game ever, and they've made this. And I'll say this: it's the least buggiest Assassin's Creed game I've ever played. I haven't encountered any bugs, and it's just fantastic. It really is. Like if people have been like me, that the whole like look, Valhalla is a gorgeous game. It absolutely gorgeous game. No matter what you play it on, it's a beautiful game. The combat is really fun, but like I put 90 hours into Valhalla and felt like I never made any progress in the story. And the story in the past 3 games, I'd say, has been pretty weak compared to the first few. But in this, like, the gameplay is just so much fun. Having a city to explore again. And since you're not on a horse most of the time, you're literally going through parkour routes. You're spending most of your time on rooftops. And it just feels like a proper Assassin's Creed game. So if you've been out of the loop for a long time and maybe the action RPGs didn't do it for you, this is going to hit well. And the thing is, it's selling great on all platforms. It's actually come to iOS soon as well, which is crazy to think. But I'd say it's arguably one of the best Assassin's Creed games. Is it perfect? No. No. It's far from perfect. I'd actually say the weakest part of the game is its main story. But at the same time, you have to think that, well, this is originally an expansion. So, and plus, I think the best content in the game is actually the contracts. So whenever you go to one of the assassins' bureaus, or whatever you want to call them, there's a contracts board, and some of them will be for assassinate this target, tail this target, or, pickpocketing. Pickpocketing is a big thing in this game. That's basically how you get most of your money. So there's a little pickpocketing mechanic, and I don't know, man. I've just had a smile on my face the entire time. It's genuinely good. Like, really good. Logan, do you think you'll be picking it up at all?
Yeah, I will down the line. I'm excited that they're going back to their roots and going to the more old school Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 style. I love the old parkour and the assassinations, like, sneaking through the bazaar, and then like there's a Templar at a certain stall, you gotta pop out, or sitting on the park bench and then running around and doing this and that and sneaking through crowds. Like, I'm excited that they're going back to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I know people may be getting bored of me talking about Assassin's Creed, but like that was a staple of the seventh generation. Like if you think about seventh generation games, like you had, obviously Mass Effect, BioShock, Assassin's Creed, like those are like the staples. And honestly, after playing this, I think that Ubisoft, given the success of how big it's been, and plus it's such a good price. Like in the UK, it's $44.99. $44.99. And I bought the £50 version which comes with the Prince of Persia outfit. Like,
How is that?
it's really cool. like I've said before, like I don't really buy digital deluxe editions because I think it's useless crap. Right? I've said that before and I'll say it again, but I was a hypocrite. I decided to get the fancy Prince of Persia stuff. And all the cinematics are in game. So your sword's actually glowing and there's particle effects coming off the sword and dagger. So to me, it's like, am I getting £5 worth of extra value off that? And you know what? I'll say yes, because it's it's cool. It really is. You can tell, like, every opportunity the developers have said it's a back to roots game. It's a celebration of the older games, and it really is. And considering how popular it's been, how it's got lower reviews than the past few, but I think so many people are obsessed with the whole, hey, let's do this massive open world game where there's 50,000 different items of loot and they all have damage numbers. It's like, no, in this game, you can take out an enemy by throwing a knife at the head. Like,
Seems effective.
yeah, yeah, and like like playing it made me realize too many games rely on damage numbers, stats, items, and all that stuff. But like when you play Red Dead, there's none of that stuff. Like all enemies basically have the same amount of health, and if you hit someone in the head, boom, they out. Right? It's like that with the original Assassin's Creed games. And in this game, you can manually aim a knife, meaning that you can arc them and hit enemies from a distance. It's so bloody good. It's damn good. And yeah, it's probably going to be one of the best games of the year. Is it going to be my game of the year? No. Like, it's not, but it's going to be top 10, definitely. And again, the price. Like, I hope this tells developers that just because your game is AAA, it doesn't need to be $70. It really doesn't. Like, I believe the price in the US is $50 or $60. Is that right?
I haven't checked personally, but I think it was around 50 or 60, I think, yeah.
But it just goes to show, like, I hope developers pay attention to this because, like, if a developer or publisher is like coming out with a brand new AAA game, do you really need to slap the $70 on it? We've talked about before on the podcast about how there should be a sliding scale for developers. Like, is it single player only? Is it linear? Maybe not have it $70 because look, should FIFA or whatever it's called, it was an EA FC something. Like, does that really need to be 70? People are paying for like a roster update every year, and that's £70. Really? Why not 50 or 40? But I mean, that's a different topic for another day. But hey, Assassin's Creed Mirage, it's back. And the thing is, next year's Assassin's Creed is in Japan. Assassin's Creed Red. That is going to be apparently the last open world RPG. And given the success of Mirage, it might be the right move. Because I think they should go back to making games in cities. But hey, that might be a bit of a hot take. Everyone's kind of split on the Assassin's Creed fan base at the minute. But yeah, we'll move on. Excuse me. Anyway, we got some new Game Pass announcements today, and there's some really cool games here. So I'll go over the list quick. There's Frog Detective. Never heard of it. There's F1 Manager 2023. Now, if you live in Europe, you're probably really excited about that. But if you live outside of Europe, you're probably going to think it's a lot of just databases and stuff. But hey, it is what it is. Headbangers Rhythm Royale. Now, this game is a bit like Mario Party. So I've actually been looking forward to it. I need a new party game with my mates. This looks really good. One of my most anticipated games of the year, Jusant. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Otherwise, I apologize to the developers. I'm probably butchering it. It's an action adventure game where you climb this massive like tower / mountain. So rather than like going through an open world, traversing through different levels, you actually climb this like massive tower, and each level has a different biome. So you'll be climbing through like a sandy tower or like snow and rock, all that stuff, and it looks really cool. It's made by the developers of Life is Strange, I believe. So it's something completely different for them. City Skylines 2 is coming to Game Pass on PC. It got delayed, the console version, into next year, unfortunately. But hey, it's still going to be coming to Game Pass whenever it launches on consoles anyway. Now, I'm going to butcher this name as well because apparently I've lost my ability to read. Minako's Night Market. I'm not going to lie, I have no idea what that is, but it's got some cute art. And the final one.
It was in the. Oh, go ahead.
No, continue.
I was gonna say it was in one of the Tokyo Game Show dev things I remember a while back, and it's a cute Japanese indie game, and it looked fun to me. But I remember that name in particular.
I'll take your word for it. I mean, I've been out of the loop recently. But the final one is Dead Space Remake. Now, that game, like Logan, I know you played that as well. Like, what do you think of Dead Space Remake?
It's one of my games of the year. It's phenomenal. It's like the first one was a masterclass anyway, and the remake was even better. Like it somehow made it to where adding, all this dialogue for Isaac made his character have so much more depth. Interactions, the being able to actually fully explore the Ishimura and some other stuff and get to these rooms and side quests. They expanded the lore and decisions and gameplay with the Dead Space 2 type anti-grav and floating around and set up for a second remake. It's about as close to perfection for a horror game as you can get. It's brilliant. And if you're not a wuss and you like horror games, now's the time to play it. It's October. Get on it. Chop chop.
Yeah, like it is scary. Like it takes the jump scares.
Yeah.
So
it's gory too.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, very gory. But I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called the Nightmare Director or something. And so basically, in the original Dead Space, you'd be walking down a specific corridor, and then there would be a timer or a certain point where an enemy would have to pop out of a wall. Now, no matter how many times you played that game, that same enemy would pop out of that same part of the wall. But in the Dead Space remake, they did the coolest thing ever. They basically go off how you've played in the game. So if you've struggled in the game, maybe you've died a lot, maybe you've had to reload a save a bunch of times, they'll actually put less enemies in a certain area. But if you've been breezing through sections, they'll make it so there's more areas being infected by enemies. And basically, the game is different every single time you play it. So rather than the original where an enemy would pop out of a certain wall panel, an enemy could pop out of maybe 3 enemies pop out of different wall panels. Maybe you're walking down a corridor and an enemy pops out of a wall behind you. And that's the coolest thing about that. By the way, we normally have an amazing chat during the podcast live. Today, for some reason, we have some of the absolute stinkers of the community in the chat. I don't know why, but anyway, I need to clean that up. Anyway, Dead Space Remake, fantastic game. And the cool thing is that in the original, there would be these doors locked off that you just could never go into. But in the remake, they all have these sort of security clearance attached to them, meaning that you can actually go back to earlier sections during the Ishimura. And because in the original, you couldn't go back to earlier sections. So once you clear the engineering section, you move into the habitation labs and all that stuff. And in the new one, you can actually go back and forth. Maybe you'll find like upgrade nodes, so you can actually fully upgrade your suit. It's just great. It really is. It's the best example of a remake. Like they took the original, they added the more story elements with Isaac Clarke and his wife, and they just went full haul with it. It is fantastic. The visuals obviously stunning. The weapons amazing. They've basically made the upgrade tree better, because the upgrade tree in the original would just take way too long to upgrade things. There would be too many empty nodes.
It was a grind.
Yeah, it was.
Sure.
Yeah, the original game was a hell of a grind. And the thing about this game is it actually has an easy mode, or should I say a super easy mode compared to the original. So if people are struggling or maybe don't like horror games, just pop that on. Have some fun, you know? As someone that loves sci-fi, it's fantastic. Like, it really is. And like you said, it's October. Play a scary game. Why not, you know? I will say this, though, EA was very happy with the sales of that game and, like, the performance on all platforms. And I think we will see Dead Space 2 remake. It kind of makes sense. This remake was basically to tell if there's a fan base still out there for the franchise, because that was the biggest risk, right? The biggest risk was, would they make this game and no one would buy it, because people were so sour off Dead Space 3. Dead Space 3. What were they thinking? That game had some of the worst checkpoints I've ever seen in a game, to the point where when I was playing Dead Space 3 back in the day, I had to play the same segment. Logan, can you remember in Dead Space 3 where you get locked in a sort of a moving tram where there's constant enemies flowing in?
Oh my gosh, yes. And like you got into these like certain rooms where there's like these stealth raptor dudes, and they would pop out every once in a while, and you had to go through this maze and stuff. Yeah, that was awful.
Yeah, well, the checkpoint system kind of broke when I was playing it, so I had to play the same section 6 times in a row.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, like, that was not nice. But hey, Dead Space, it's in a good place. I think EA, like, with all their single player content they have coming, they're in a good place. They have the Iron Man game coming out, the Black Panther game. They have a bunch of Star Wars games in development. Apparently, there's a Titanfall 3 coming out. Well, I hope that's real. I've been begging for Titanfall 3 for, it feels like 10 years now. But yeah, good time. I think, it's a good month for Game Pass and all that stuff. Anyway, let's move on to some of the bigger topics. We have a lot to cover here because it's been 3 weeks. You know what? Before we get into all the topics, like I said, I've been ill, and if people really want to help the channel out, please share it. Again, YouTube doesn't do its job. 3 weeks off means the algorithm is all kinds of messed up, and Super Chats are live if you want to support the channel and all that stuff. And I also have some really cool videos coming soon. Anyway, you know what? Let's get into the whole Disney thing, because this is pretty much going to affect everyone. So Disney is reportedly wanting to buy a big publisher like EA and basically get into the gaming space, because as of right now, they do theme parks, they do movies and TV via the streaming app, and gaming would be a significant jump for them. Like, they have licensed IP, right? They don't really make games. And I don't know. Like, honestly, the thing is about Disney, I think if you look back, I think it was like 12 years ago when they did have studios making games. Like that Tron Evolution came out. They had a few different studios making games, and all those studios got shut down. So, like, for them wanting to come back into gaming, which is why I predict Apple's going to get into the gaming space, is that, entertainment's pretty much done, right? Movies and TV, they've got that content unlocked. They can make as much as they want for the rest of eternity, right? Gaming is the final frontier, right? Apple, Disney, all those companies, they're going to start making games, because that's where a lot of money is. Gaming makes more money than TV, music, and movies combined every year. So, like, why not get into that space, right? If you look at Apple, right, their new phone allows you to play Assassin's Creed Mirage, Resident Evil 8, and Resident Evil 4 Remake. Like, that is crazy. We're at that place now. So, like, it makes sense for Apple. The M1 chip is going to be able to, play all those games. And also, I think the next Apple TV is going to be their Trojan horse into the gaming space. So there's that. But you look at Disney, and I can honestly see them doing this. Getting EA or some publisher to make exclusive content. Not exclusive content, just content. Because if Disney's going to make content, it's going to be on consoles, right? It's going to be on the platforms that are already out in the wild. Honestly, I don't really have a problem with it. I really don't. As long as, like, if they get EA, leave them as is, right? They're making licensed IP right now. They've got their own IP to worry about and all that stuff. Like, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. My only worry would be shock about Mass Effect. Now, where am I going with this? So, back in 2013, I think it was, at E3, EA signed a 10-year exclusivity deal to make Star Wars games. So, for 10 years, only them could make Star Wars games, although I think that was made less over time. Anyway, now, when they got the Star Wars rights to make games, I was kind of heartbroken because I kind of knew then EA is going to take away focus from Mass Effect. Because there was a time we were going to get a first-person shooter PvP Mass Effect game. It got cancelled. There was rumours that we were going to get a start. I only heard brief rumours about this a few years ago, that there was going to be a Mass Effect RTS and a bunch of other stuff, right? Mass Effect was no longer a point of concern anymore, because if you have the biggest license in the world, Star Wars, why would you work on Mass Effect, right? Star Wars is this household name, so, like, instead of making Mass Effect, make Star Wars. And, like, my big worry would be, like, would Disney concentrate on, Star Wars RPGs and not make Mass Effect anymore? That would be my major worry. Other than that, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. What about you, Logan?
I'm actually all in on the idea of Disney doing it. Like, with a few caveats, like you said. Like, I've been overall a fan of what they've done with Star Wars. Like the sequel trilogy, I have some things I really like about it, and I have some things I really don't like about it. But outside of that, like the shows and the games and the books and the novels and the graphic comics and all the other outside media for Star Wars has like been awesome since they got them. And then Marvel has taken off, and they have all this stuff and all this experience managing all this entertainment empire. To me, they seem like the lesser concern from a outside party wanting to buy their way into the gaming industry. Like, I would be far more concerned with an Apple or a Google or a, like, insert random billionaire or tech company who has a pie in the sky notion to make a quick buck. Like, I would be far more concerned with them than I would Disney. And, like, I think Disney could, keep things as is with, like, an EA, for example. Not saying they're buying them, but throw them out there. Because that seems to be the publisher everybody throws out for everything. So, like, you could have it where you have, like, they make games based off their licenses they have. Like, you have your Star Wars, you've got, Predator, Alien, like, insert any family friendly franchise they have that they could make family games for. And then you can also do the inverse. Like, you know how Sony has done a great job of, like, turning The Last of Us into a series or making some of their other stuff into films. Disney could totally do the same. Like, imagine getting a John Carpenter or someone, a renowned director, to make an actual Dead Space film or series. Or, Dante's Inferno, adapt that further. Like, there's so much that they could do both ways. So to me, I think they would be the safest choice to enter the industry. And I think they would probably keep things mainly status quo with a few exceptions.
Yeah, the thing is, like Apple, I think Apple would be like the worst one to do it because like everyone that has an iPhone potentially has a new, Apple console, whatever, and there's
Mhm.
Apple TVs, basically anything Apple makes. Um, and plus the way they charge things, like we have this joke in the UK called Apple tax. Like, so if something costs $1,000, they'll make it like £1,100 because they can. And I think that's kind of a shame. But when it comes to Disney, I honestly, I don't think it'd be much of an issue. Like you're saying, they could make expanded properties with certain things and stuff. Like I would love to see a Dead Space series. I really would. Um, I think which director did you say wanted to make a Dead Space series?
Oh, Carpenter.
Yeah, Carpenter. Like he mentioned ages ago, he would like to do a film or something with that, and like that would be the perfect, director's job for him. Uh, hey, I know there's people like freaking out, losing it on Twitter, or should I say X. You know what? I'm not calling it X. Um, I think it would be fine. It really would. My only concerns, like I said, would be over like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, all that stuff. Would Titanfall and all those intellectual properties be fine? But other than that, I don't really think it would be a bad thing at all. Really, I just think again, Apple. We don't want Apple because I have an Apple device. I use an iPhone, right? But outside of that, like I do not trust Apple, right? Because of just everything they do, right? Um, you look at the
They
and it.
kind of have that. Oh, go ahead.
No, continue.
I was gonna say they kind of have that stone cold Silicon Valley vibe, like on lock, and so it makes you a little concerned about what they do. But I mean, they've, of course, at the same time, they've been doing a killer job with Apple Plus TV and the series and movies they have on there. So maybe they do good with it, but I don't know, something about it makes me a little worried with them.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong. Like, whenever there's like a big press conference by Apple, I watch them because I'm interested in new technology and stuff. But like, when I was watching their last presser, and then they had Assassin's Creed Mirage there, and the Resident Evil games looking the way they do, and even though the phone does apparently melt itself when you plug it into a TV to play these games, like the technology's getting there, right? So I don't know. I like people like to war and like people are in my comments. And by the way, I like to say I have the best chat on YouTube because nobody argues and there's no fanboy crap. Today is like bad for some reason. Is it because I've got Xbox owns Activision? Like, shouldn't you be playing Baldur's Gate 3 while you wait for Spider Man? Like, why are you here? Um,
You mentioned ABK, that's why.
yeah, they like, oh, just the worst. But yeah, like when I was watching that press conference, I was thinking, oh, so that's how Apple's gonna do it. That's how they're gonna do it because you get one of those little Apple TVs what a year from now when they put an M1 chip in there and it's maybe what $200 or something like that. There it is right there because you can already play games on an Apple TV. So like, why not put an M1 chip in there and start look, I think it's going to happen. I've been saying for the past 2 years that they're going to get into gaming. There was rumors a year ago that they're going to get into gaming with a console. Although I don't see a console happening, but like with the iPhones, the tablets, basically any device with an M1 chip, like you slap an M1 chip in a fridge, it's going to play Resident Evil 8. But honestly, Disney, I have no problem with it. I really don't. I still need to watch Ahsoka, but outside of
So good.
yeah, I keep
It's so good.
I've been too ill to watch it. I've just been like I'll put it off, but I will get around to it. It looks fantastic, and plus I love that prequel stuff. By the way, bit of a tangent. Like every time there was a prequel thing in Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I was like, oh, this is nice. Like I don't know, there's something about the prequel era for Star Wars for me now. I love that stuff. I love the Clone Wars. Honestly, I would love some Star Wars games with that, the Clone Wars aesthetic.
Well, it just so happens Minecraft is getting a Clone Wars mission set.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so Minecraft is getting a Clone Wars era mission pack. I think it's going to be free. I'm not entirely sure, but the second I saw Coruscant with the Jedi Temple, I'm like, okay, I need to re-download Minecraft. Turns out I've already got it downloaded, but hey, I'm up for more Star Wars. I'd be wondering, do people in chat, are you okay with Disney getting EA or another publisher like that? Personally, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. I think Apple would be the one to worry about. Anyway, we'll move on because that's a lot of EA and Disney stuff. Man, we've got way too much to talk about. You know what? Let's get into some really spicy stuff. So, now Microsoft had a big leak about 3 weeks ago. New hardware. There's a new Xbox Series X digital coming out a year from now. There's a new Xbox Series controller coming out that has a gyroscope in it and all that stuff, so you can do gyro aiming. Which I've been pushing for gyro aiming for the past 2 years because that's actually good for people that are handicapable, like have limited movement. So like that would be really cool for them. And plus, it's just another option. Like personally, I wouldn't use it, but for people that need it or want to, why not? Doesn't hurt anyone. And all that stuff. Oh, and by the way, the controller is going to have this feature, which I think phones have it, like all phones have it, but controllers don't, and it's lift to wake, right? It's such a small feature, but I want that, right? Because I'll be watching a film or something, and I want to pick up my controller to pause it, maybe get a drink, and it's like you pick up your controller and it wakes up. It's such a tiny, minuscule feature, but I really want it. Like, Logan, you know what? I think we may have mentioned that in the past. Like, just lift to wake, and what do you think of the new controller in general?
I'm all for options. Like, I'm personally thrilled with my Elite controller and my other, special edition ones I've gotten and stuff. But if it comes bundled with something or you got a good deal on it, I might pick one up. But, gyroscopic is cool and haptics is alright, but at the end, those aren't my major things, so it's probably not for me, but I'm happy there's more options for folks.
Yeah, I mean, the gyro thing, plus, that's one of those things you can usually turn off. But yeah, lift to wake, hype. It's just a tiny feature. Again, all of our phones do that. I think phones have been doing that since 2006. But hey, it's cool stuff. But anyway, where am I going with this? So this digital Series X made people lose their minds, lose their marbles. They were flabbergasted. So people were all of a sudden coming out of the woodwork saying, game preservation. What about game preservation? And I kind of tilted my head sideways like a confused puppy dog because that didn't make any sense. Microsoft's the only console manufacturer that's literally invested millions into taking care of literally legacy titles, right? Letting you play your legacy titles with your free saves. And I just thought it was kind of funny because people all of a sudden forgot about the backwards compatibility, which they've been working on since 2015, where we have literally hundreds of games from three previous well, technically thousands, but you have over 500 Xbox 360 games. You have, I think, 80 original Xbox games, which you can, play on your hardware. If you've got that OG disc, you can pop it in and play it. And people are making a big, kerfuffle about it. I don't know where all these words are coming from today, but because you wouldn't be able to play these games anymore because Xbox is ruining game preservation. Big content creators, huge ones, making videos about it. When I kind of thought it was weird because Sony does not invest in backwards compatibility for 3 of their generations. And look, streaming does not count, right? That crap does not count. And I kind of thought it was funny because PlayStation came out with a digital PlayStation 3 years ago. But all of a sudden it's an issue. And where am I going with this? Um, so the PlayStation Slim got announced, and by the way, I think the optional disc drive, and I've been saying for like again 2 years, I think doing an optional disc drive for a console is actually the right way to go about it. Because if your console breaks or your disc drive breaks, you just have to buy an accessory. You don't have to buy a new console. It's easier to repair because you just change out modules. And to me, that's a good move. Like I think Sony doing the PlayStation Slim the way they're doing it is actually good. Their pricing model and charging extra for a stand and all that stuff, I think that's dog crap. But when it comes to a separate disc drive, I think that's good. I think that's a way to go about it. Xbox Era, they reported that there's going to be a disc drive for the Xbox Digital Slim next year. So, like, why is it only an issue when Microsoft wants to do digital, right? There's been rumors now of a Nintendo Switch that has no backwards compatibility or a SD card slot, a cartridge card slot. But it's only an issue, and people only make videos about it when it's Xbox. And I just thought that was kind of weird. Like, why are we at that now? Like Logan, you saw what was we talk about backwards compatibility all the time. It's clearly a subject we care about. It's clearly a subject people in chat care about. What do you think of that whole situation? Because it was crazy online.
Yeah, I mean, it just boils down to Xbox hate pays the bucks. It's what happens. It's dumb, and no matter how many times people rail against it or call it out, it just keeps happening. You've got, get major gaming outlets in their feels about anything related to Xbox and trying to spin it, whether it's they can suddenly play digital movies versus, oh, now it means it's actually something illicit, nefarious versus, like, you know where I'm going. There's like all kinds of just FUD and nonsense whenever it comes to Xbox. And it's goofy, and it's not a tinfoil hat thing. It's just like, it's common sense, obvious. Like, just sit there and use your brain and look and read and see what's out there, and you notice trends and notice certain places seem to have certain slants. Right or wrong, it is what it is. And so those went with their token alleys this past few weeks with this whole leak situation in the console. Like, to me, a digital only console is not a big deal. It is a sign that the industry is changing, and it's to be more adaptable, affordable, give other people options, which I'm all for, as long as they give you an option for a disc slot add-on. Like, that way you can play your older games, or if somebody, buys you a gift on a holiday and they don't know that you have a digital only console, they're like, oh, he plays on Xbox. I picked this up at the store. I'll give him this as a gift. Instead of going, well, I'm screwed. I can't play it. Or I got to go trade it in or return it. You've got a disc drive. You pop it in and you connect it to your Xbox. You're good to go. Like, as long as they do that, backwards compatibility is 100% secure and fine. And you won't have any problems. So it's a whole big kerfuffle about nothing.
Yeah, before we continue with the topic, we have the first super chat of the day. Thank you very much, Nick W, for the $9.99. He says, only system with decent backwards. Oh, sorry, I think it means backwards compatibility for Sony is the fat PlayStation 3 because it plays everything, and he's right. Yeah, like that OG George Foreman could play everything. Literally everything.
They were pioneers for BC back in the day, and then they dropped it like a hot potato.
Yeah, like I had the first version of the Slim, and that only played original PlayStation games. So like when I got that, I didn't know I couldn't play PlayStation 2 games at the time. So I was kind of like, really annoyed by that. But like you're right, that the OG PlayStation 3 could play everything. It also had like a million ports. But like that console could play everything, and that was the cool thing about that. It may have been pricey at the time, and you were told to get 2 jobs for it, which I still can't believe that that happened. But that was a cool system for backwards compatibility. And I know Sony said in the past that, they decided to pull backwards compatibility for, PlayStation 2 because of the people that use it. But I think now more than ever, people are wanting to go back to play games that they own or have missed out on. Because, look, not all games... Should we sit here and say, hey, we hope this game gets a remake, that game gets a remake? But last generation, remember for the first 3 years, everyone was complaining about remasters. Every game was getting remastered. Also, that's because publishers didn't think consoles were going to succeed last generation. That's why there were so many remasters. But people just want remakes of everything now. We've talked about this in the past. I personally think 7th generation games don't need remakes, outside of a few. And we've talked about this in the past. Dragon Age Origins, that game looked old the day it came out.
It has not aged gracefully.
Yeah, I put it like this: back then, developers were struggling making small polygon objects, small objects with lots of polygons. So that's why you'd have a character holding a mug the size of the head, because they couldn't make cups that small, just things like that. And there's a part in Dragon Age Origins where your character's holding a chalice, and the chalice is about the size of his torso. So. Just all those different things. And, look, I think people should be able to play... if you're on PC, you can play games going back to, the 80s and beforehand. You can play Zork on a PC. And with consoles, we haven't had that. And I think that what's wrong with wanting the ability to play all your games? And that should go towards all platforms, not just Xbox when it, it's convenient to have a go at them. We've seen time and time again, people will complain about Xbox about something other consoles do or don't do, and it happens all the time. And if you point it out, you get called a fanboy. And that's the really sad part of the situation. But again, Xbox coming out next year with a digital only X and then a disc drive option. How's that a bad thing? It's just an option. But yeah, outside of that, I'm looking forward to the future of Xbox. And while we do have some trolls in chat today, again, I don't understand why they're here. Get back to Baldur's Gate while you wait for Spider-Man. I don't understand. I really don't. Honestly, Logan, do you think it's because I have Xbox owns Activision Blizzard in the title?
Honestly, it's kind of like when you post those cloud holding an Xbox controller posts. It's like a porch light for certain types of activity that you generally don't want. To me, it's kind of like that.
You know what?
Or I think putting Activision Blizzard King in a title with Xbox owning them, it's like just a neon sign that says the light's on, come on in.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So about a week ago, I posted an AI generated image of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII holding an Xbox controller. Now the only reason I posted it is because I thought the AI image was cool, right? Because I've been messing around with AI for the past 6 months, and I got some really cool images, some of which will be getting used soon. But I just thought it was really cool, so I thought I'll post it on Twitter because, Square Enix came out. They said they have a commitment to Xbox now. They're going to commit to putting more Final Fantasy games on Xbox. And I literally posted, it's inevitable. And I posted a picture of Cloud holding an Xbox controller. And everyone lost it. People lost it. And I didn't really expect... I was just expecting people to say, oh, cool AI image. I didn't really think about it. And I didn't really realize how upset the... What's the term? Horse and cart would be, because it was just an AI image. That's all it was, And I just don't understand. And by the way, that Bing AI image generator has gotten really impressive. Really good now. But yeah, I just, people lost it. And Final Fantasy VII is like that's a household name, but that's a Square Enix title, right? You can play Final Fantasy VII, the original, on an Xbox, PlayStation, a Switch. You can play that on literally your mobile phone, probably a smart fridge at some point. Probably is already there. But it just becomes a really big issue if you mention the remake or even hint at the remake and Xbox in the same sentence. And I just think it kind of makes me think they are bullies in a way, right? Because bullies can't take what they give out. So, like, if they just, like, it even remotely hinted at that maybe someone else can play one of their games, they threatened. If you make fun of something they like, they feel threatened. And they are weak. They are weak people. And that's why they overreact, right? An AI-generated image of Cloud made people lose it. And then I did Sephiroth the next day. And then I did Cloud again. I posted a Cloud image again last night. It's like, it's just an image of a dude that doesn't know you exist holding an Xbox controller. That's all it is. And, people are really threatened by Xbox at the minute, by the way. There was a video going around on Twitter last night. Yeah. There's a video going around on Twitter last night of this dude in Japan posting on about how, like, the console doesn't sell there and how he hates it. It's like, you're an American that hates an American console? Like, okay, that's a thing now. People are so protective. Like, Sony bought their way into the industry. Like, but people don't like to realize that. People don't like to talk about that. But it happened, right? It happened in the 90s. We were all there. Well, some of us were there, but it's just consoles, right? People take this stuff way too seriously. Like, we play these games with our hands to make characters move on a screen, and people act like we are hurting their families, right? It's gaming at the end of the day. Who cares, right? So if Final Fantasy VII Remake comes to an Xbox, do you know who loses in that situation? No one. Literally no one. But people will take that to heart, and I will post another image of Cloud holding an Xbox controller in the next few days just because I can. Why not? I'm just shocked that the reaction that got, like, wow. Anyway, we'll move on because, AI images are scary. Before I move on, I'll talk about this quick. Logan, did you see the Nintendo? I sent you the link. The Nintendo 64 3D got announced last night.
Yeah, I am so pumped for that. Like, N64 was my first system ever, and I still got my whole catalog in my closet ready to go. I cannot wait for that. Analog handheld was brilliant with all the Game Boys and the Sega gear and all that other stuff, so I have no doubts this will be great.
Yeah, so if people don't know, just keep this topic brief. I like playing my past games, right? That's why you have them. If you're going to buy a game, replay it at some point. And I have basically most of my games ever, right? Most of my games from my childhood and all that stuff. And the Nintendo 64 is one of my favorite consoles of all time, right? I loved playing that thing. Like, if I had £1 for every single hour I played WWF No Mercy, I would own Twitter, right? I would literally own Earth. And Nick W with another super chat for 199 says, "What AI program did you use?" Bing AI image generator. That thing got an upgrade maybe a month ago. It uses Dolly AI or something like that, one of those programs, and it's gotten really detailed. Really detailed. Like, I got images of Cloud that were basically, it made the character look like it was an action figure. Like, I did a prompt, not Fox with Cloud, Cloud Final Fantasy VII holding an Xbox controller, action figure style. And it came out like an action figure. It was really cool. Highly recommend people mess around with Bing AI. Really cool image stuff. And I don't know, I really enjoy messing around with AI at the minute. Really cool stuff. But anyway, thank you for the 199, Nick W. But yeah, the Nintendo 64, one of my favorite consoles of all time. And there's this company called Analog, and they make these new consoles for old games. So basically, they came out with the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis a few years ago, a Super Nintendo. I think they have a Sega Saturn. and it upscales your games to 4K. It's basically a new console for your old games. So anyway, they're coming out with a brand new Nintendo 64 that plays all of your games in 4K, right? So you remember how blurry some of those games would be? They would be in full 4K. A bunch of different image options, so you can play them in different resolution styles or aspect ratios, and it has all the ports. So if you want to use the original controllers, you can. It comes with a new controller which resembles a 360 controller in a way, and man, it looks so good. It's going to be pricey. I think it's going to be, I'm just guessing, in dollars, I think it's going to be $350 because they use like high quality materials. They make the chips themselves, and it's not emulation. Like, they make new hardware for those cartridges or discs to play. I think they're probably going to come out with an original PlayStation and an original Xbox at some point, because that's what they do. They have a new Game Boy. You can buy I think it's called the Analog Pocket, and you can plug in a Game Boy game, or Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, even some other handheld consoles, and it'll play your games. I think it's like some 1440p or some crap, on an OLED screen. Beautiful. But anyway, there's me nerding out about the Nintendo 64. It's just another option. Personally, I really want to get one. It comes out in 2024. And Logan, do you think you'll pick one up? It is going to be pricey.
Yeah, I think that's something I really want. Like, especially like if some of these games never get ports or remasters or whatever, like I can go back and revisit and, imagine playing, Mario 64 in 4K or Ocarina of Time in 4K or Rogue Squadron and like Castlevania 64. Like, there's so many great games that you can play, and the analog pocket is incredible. So, yeah, I can't wait for that, man.
Yeah, you mentioned Rogue Squadron. That was the main game I was thinking about outside of No Mercy, because like Rogue Squadron was a damn good game.
Oh,
Excellent.
so good.
Yeah, excellent. I see Shizno's asking in chat who's making these. Analog. Search them on Twitter. That's just the name of the company, Analog. They make high-end looking like and feeling hardware, just old consoles. Again, they've made the Genesis / Sega Mega Drive, a Super Nintendo, a Game Boy, and I'm pretty sure a Sega Saturn. And the next console they're making is the Nintendo 64 3D. It looks super cool. The controller, people have edge lighted it so you can see what the whole thing looks like. It basically looks like an Xbox 360 controller, but instead of a second stick, you have the C buttons. So it basically is a N64 controller. But anyway, this is an Xbox podcast to get that, but I just wanted to nerd out a bit because I love the Nintendo 64. I absolutely love that. I put it like this. I told my mother about the N64 3D. She wants one as well, because she played games on the Nintendo 64. And like trying to play a Nintendo 64 on a modern TV, ugh, no. It
I
probably
don't know how I used that three-limbed abomination now that whenever I go back to try to revisit, like, I don't know how on earth I mastered that.
yeah. I don't know why they designed the controller that way. I don't know if anyone knew. Like, some people would hold the middle bit and the left side, and some people just, I don't know. It was weird. But anyway, cool hardware. Again, I hope they do I hope they do a 360 or something at some point. Like, that's the dream. Maybe. And if they do a 360 at some point, I will buy two, because I love that 360. Anyway, that's enough me nerding about the Nintendo 64, because I love that console. Anyway, some people are leaving in the game industry. Excuse me. Jim Ryan announced that he's leaving Sony, and as of yesterday, Pete Hines is leaving Bethesda. Now, I want to get this out of the way. I don't think either of them were end of the world things. Jim Ryan's leaving because he failed to cancel the Activision deal, or Pete Hines is leaving Xbox Bethesda because he doesn't like Xbox. I just think like they've both been in the industry for a long time, right? Ryan Jim Ryan's been working on PlayStation for 30 years. Pete Hines has been working at Bethesda for 24 years. Like, that's a long time to be working for one company. So, like, I can't really blame either one of them of just, changing. I really don't get that. Like, the cool thing, I could easily make fun of the situation, but, like, it's just two people leaving. Like, that's all it is. It will be sad to see Pete Hines go, though, because I think, you could tell he had this, like, passion for all their Bethesda titles. And plus, like, I think, I feel like the Xbox community in general is very tight-knit. And, like, I see a lot of developers and people that work at Xbox talk to the fans, and there's this kind of equilibrium with Xbox, right? The fans talk to the, even the execs and the developers, and there's this cool back and forth, which I don't see with Nintendo or Sony. And it's just like, it's just a different dynamic. And I think Xbox, like, it's going to be sad to see Pete Hines go, but it happens, Logan, obviously, you saw people overreact to this.
Oh yes, people and overreactions is is Twitter's name and game, and start with Jim. To me, I don't think it's solely because of the ABK thing. I think that was kind of his last grand stand, or like last hurrah big thing he tried to do, but I don't think that solely is why he would leave. I think he's been there 30 years. He's been incredibly successful. Yes, he has said a bunch of things that have been clowned and ridiculed and have been called out for being like, "Hey, now, why are you saying that?" But if you look at a purely business bottom line dollars sense, he's been incredibly successful for PlayStation's brand. Like they curb stomped Xbox in the PS4 generation. They just did, and he was in charge of that. Or he and Sean Layden, and then he took over and really took him off to another level. And he's a really good businessman. Just PR, and maybe not the person you want in front of the mic talking to everybody. But from a numbers sense, he was really good at his job. He did well for them. Wish him well. I mean, I will. Part of me is sad we won't have any more Jim Flying Ryan memes anymore. But, that's okay. He certainly earned enough frequent travel miles to get some vacations now from going to Brussels so much. So, good luck to him. And then for Pete, yeah, that's a big bummer. Uncle Pete, as he's affectionately known as. He's been at Bethesda 24 years since the beginning. He always used to give out those little fun doctor's notes so people could, skip work or school to play Skyrim or Fallout or whatever for launches, and he'd show up at QuakeCons and midnight events. He was the guy who did the demo test for Oblivion, and I remember there was an issue with it, and he had to just, wing it, so to speak, and it's just, he's been a great figure of the community. I don't think it's an ill will thing at all. I think he was just ready to kind of, enjoy his life. Like, the gaming industry can be quite taxing, especially for some of these higher level execs or people in communications roles. And frankly, I think he was probably just wanting a refresher. And so, congrats to him. Go enjoy your dogs and just enjoy life. And I'm curious to see who their successors are.
Yeah, I mean, being in the gaming space in any position, like even like making content, like you have to put up with a lot of crap, right? So like you look at someone that's like Pete Hines, who has like a ridiculous amount of followers and probably gets tags thousands of times a day by some of the most disgusting people on the planet, well, in the gaming space, and like I can see that being a lot. Plus, again, 24 years is a long time. That's a really long time. So like, I can't blame him. Like, people want to do different things. I can't imagine working at the same place for 24 years. That would drive me balmy, to be honest. I'd be driven crazy. Like, I can't do the same thing for 5 minutes without wanting to blow my brains out. But that's just me being annoying. But yeah, like, I can't blame him. I really can't. And it could be like the harassment thing in the gaming space is just like, it's unlike anything else, right? You know, all facets in life and like mediums have these fan bases, right? Music, entertainment, movies, TV, everything, sports. Like, there's these fan bases that are constantly going back and forth, right? But I only see it in gaming where people like give people like horrible threats, like people wish ill health on others,
Psychotic.
yeah, psychotics, and like over games. It's just games, right? And like people can get really vile over it. And at the end of the day, we're meant to be having fun with these things, right? And I think there's a big difference between people having like a bit tongue in cheek and a bit of a laugh than just people like in chat, like in my chat before, J-Dub, like absolute toxic fanboy, constantly just talking about Xbox or talking about other people. Like, why can't you just talk about what you like, right? There's too many people in the gaming space that focus on like hate, and like there's a difference between making a joke now and then and, you know, being toxic, right? And there's too many people that just like, if you don't like Xbox, just don't talk about them. Talk about what you like. I talk about Xbox pretty much in every single one of my tweets because that's what my Twitter's about and YouTube's about. It's Xbox centric. And there's too many people that just are forcefully negative in this gaming space. And like, there's a lot of developers, publishers that they get that on a daily basis times 1,000 to what we get. And that is, you know, I can understand it, you know. Again, 24 years is a hell of a long time. And hell, you know, maybe he'll land somewhere else in gaming. Maybe he'll do something really creative. We don't know. But hey, P. Hines, like, always seemed like a really cool guy. And wish the best to him. But yeah, bit of a shame, but it happens, you know. People leave. Anyway, we'll move on. You know, about 75 minutes into the show, again, everyone in chat has been awesome outside of the toxic few people. If you want to support the show, again, sharing, it really helps. You know, YouTube doesn't really do its job, and Super Chat's alive if you really want to support the channel and all that crap. And I really hate doing these ads, but you kind of have to. Anyway, you know what? Let's talk about some games quick before we get into the ABK stuff, because that's going to be a long topic. So literally after the last show aired, the big leak happened, and there's a lot of stuff here. Now, bear in mind, all these games are basically Bethesda titles. They're not Xbox Game Studios titles, so like not Obsidian and all that stuff. Literally just Bethesda. And basically, there's some new titles here. There's a new Doom game, Fallout remastered, Elder Scrolls remastered, new licensed IP that isn't Indiana Jones. Apparently, Indiana Jones maybe next year. Dishonored 3, Ghostwire Tokyo sequel. And honestly, all that stuff leaks. I'm excited for it, right? People may wonder, like, why am I excited about remasters? Is because you have access to the original games, right? You have access to backwards compatibility. Those games also have upgrades. So, like, it's not like you're forced into pay for that experience because you can't access your old game. Like, it's just going to be an option for people. And plus, like, let's be honest, Logan, Oblivion, that's aged a bit.
Yeah, the orcs need a facelift big time. It's brutal.
Yeah, like the Adoran fan, like that's been a meme for what, 15 years now or something. Like that game is ugly, right? Bad. But it's an old game. It was an early 360 open world game. Like they didn't really have much to run on because again, developers back then were still getting used to the hardware. Like that's why Oblivion and Skyrim look so different. Same hardware, same developers, but they knew what they were doing with Skyrim. And Oblivion was so early on, it makes sense. And then you look at, I think the problem with Fallout visually is that, and I love, Fallout 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. So like, I'm excited about it getting remastered or remake. I've seen both listed, but either way, the problem with that game is its low quality textures, right? So you'll find a bunch of rubble next to a building, but you can't tell when the rubble ends because the textures sort of just muddle together. And the game, look, it looks dated because it's old, and it is old. But I think, like I said, like Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. I'm just bringing up random games. I think that game does not need remastered. It really doesn't. But there are games that do need it. I think that if you look at the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 4, or sorry, PlayStation 3, I'd say maybe a few handful of games need remasters, right? And I think maybe a handful of games in total need to be remade. Like, did The Last of Us need to be remade? No, it didn't.
Absolutely not.
Like the PlayStation 3 version looked great. Like, but that was like time and resources to make a remake that didn't need it to a game that already got a remaster. And like it didn't need it. But like I said, Dragon Age Origins looks terrible. Looked terrible before it even released. I remember seeing the E3 trailer for that thinking, what is this? Because you go from Mass Effect to that and you're just like, oh. And I love BioWare. So like I like imagine me, right? Super happy Mass Effect nerd, wanting to see what they can do with a fantasy IP. And then I get that game, I put it in the disc tray, I start playing, and I'm like wondering what is up with the dude's face, right? I didn't like the fact that they went with a silent protagonist in that game. That felt like a step back from Mass Effect. Notice how I make every topic about Mass Effect somehow. But yeah, the games from that generation, some need remasters, a few maybe need remakes. But outside of that, I think that I talk about the 360 all the time because the games from that generation have aged so well, so well. I talk about Binary Domain all the time because like that game's phenomenal, and it still looks good. You know, hell, look at GTA 5, right? That game we playing on Xbox Series XS and PlayStation 5, it's a 360 game. Let's be honest, right? Visually, it's a 360 game with a tiny bit of ray traced shadows. Like, Logan, every time you've seen GTA, has it really, GTA 5, would you say it really looks that much different from the 360 version?
I'd say it looks a smidge better, and it probably runs a lot better, but overall, it's not been a big enough leap for me to think it's worth buying it again. Like, I bought it again for just the Xbox One version simply so I could play it because
Yep.
Rockstar did not want to make it backwards compatible for whatever reason. They didn't. That's okay, fine, your business. So I bought it just for that, but I still haven't gotten the X or S version of it because, I bought Skyrim so many times. I don't need another game that I keep having to buy over and over and over again just for small tweaks. Like, if you want to do like a Dead Space remake or a significant remaster that comes with some quality of life changes or tweaks, great. If not, then just let me play the old one. Like, if for some reason the old one is just the code is lost or there's very specific reasons that make sense why it can't be put on there or run, then so be it. But otherwise, yeah, there's a bunch of games I think that have gotten ports that don't need them. But when there are some that deserve them that are lost to the shadows.
Yeah. I mean, like, I refuse to give Rockstar money for a third version of GTA 5. Thankfully, it's in Game Pass. So if people like me and they don't want to give Rockstar money for a third time for the same game, play the Game Pass version. I think it was also in. I think it's been in PlayStation Plus or whatever you call it. But like, don't give them your money for a third time. And like, I'm okay with some remasters for games, but yeah, like Fallout, Oblivion, I'm cool with it. As long as they're done right, right? I think games like that, they need quality of life features. They need to improve the third person combat, all that stuff. I don't think bare bones is something we should settle for, and I don't think it's something we'll get. Outside of that, new Doom game, new licensed IP. I'm putting this out there. I think the licensed IP game is a Star Wars game.
I'm convinced as well. Whether Mandalorian or not, I don't know, but I feel confident it's a Star Wars game.
Yeah, like I'm trying to wish this into existence. I want a Mass Effect 2 style Mandalorian RPG, right? It would make so much money. But yeah, I think the licensed game is Star Wars. It really is. But yeah, it's cool stuff. I have a video coming out about the whole Bethesda thing and some other unannounced games in a future video. But you know what, Logan? Let's get into the meat and potatoes, the bangers and mash, all the good stuff. So Xbox decided to buy Activision 20 months ago. 20 long months, right? That's like a long time. Right? It's like
Almost 2 years.
yeah, yeah, like you almost get two versions of GTA in that time. Like that it's been a long time, right? Every single topic online has been about Call of Duty exclusivity. Everything has been about Call of Duty. And exclusivity, what games are exclusive. It's been, I roll my eyes all the time in general, and my eyes are almost worn out to the point where I'm so annoyed. I'll probably need glasses soon, even though I don't need glasses. Anyway, they bought them. I know I'm rambling today. I'm just happy to talk because I haven't been able to talk for 3 weeks. So the deal finally went through. The CMA, the FTC, insert random letters. They didn't get their way, thankfully. And Microsoft now own Activision, Blizzard, King. By the way, notice I don't put King in the titles or mention King most of the time. It's because I don't care about Candy Crush. I'm being honest, right? I don't care. Now the deals went through, and it opens up so many possibilities. You know, Phil Spencer's talked about in the past that he wants to bring back Guitar Hero. Activision have recently mentioned in an interview Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero used to make so much money back in the day. It's unreal. It also helped that they were putting out 2 years sometimes, and that's why they killed the franchise off because of that. But if they could come back with Guitar Hero, I even came out with a list last week on like how they should bring it back, like what what model they should use to like charge people, because I'm a realist.
Great post, by the way.
Thank you. It's like a lot of people got angry at that, by the way, because I suggested that they do a expansion every quarter, which you pay for. But I'm a realist, right? I know music licenses and video games go together like water and oil, like they don't mix, and like music in gaming is a big, just nasty thing to try and sort out, right? Someone even suggested, oh, what about YouTube integration? Let me tell you, licensed music and YouTube don't go together well.
That would be a cluster of another level.
Yeah, like when I put out top lists of games, like fortunately for me, EA, Ubisoft, Embracer, like they all good with like music, but if you have a tiny bit of a licensed music like song soundtrack in your title, in your video, like it gets demonetized instantly, like literally instantly, or copyright claim, shall I say. And like for video games, like you will never have people live streaming Guitar Hero on YouTube or Twitch, unless. And I also thought of this because I've been bored for 3 weeks. You could also maybe have video game soundtracks. Whitelisted video game soundtracks. So let's say you have the Halo expansion, where you could play Halo music and play them online on Twitch and YouTube and stuff, because it's whitelisted music. And by the way, you can tell I've had a long time to think about this stuff because I've been stuck in the house for 3 weeks. I think there's so much they could do with Guitar Hero, and that's just one franchise. I always talk about Singularity coming back because that was a game it came out and a lot of people really liked it. It was classed as this BioShock style game, and a lot of people at the time were kind of negative towards it because it was like BioShock. But to me, if a game emulates a game I also like, to me that's a good thing, right? Not every game is going to be original. Not every game has to be original. It just has to be good. And Singularity was damn good. Like, Logan, did you ever get to play Singularity?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so cool. Like the time travel elements, like just the campaign, like classic Raven gunplay and id Tech, and just it it's like such a 360 era game and idea, but it came out during a convoluted time, and there were some troubles in development because they were that was right at the precipice of Activision going all in on Call of Duty, like everything. And so there was some drama behind the scenes and stuff that kind of affected it, but it is absolutely a game that 100% unequivocally should be backwards compatible and should be put in Game Pass. People should check out and hopefully get a sequel. Like, it is one of those that deserves another go.
Yeah, I think like while people have been arguing online about exclusivity for the past 20 months, and like whether the games will go to certain platforms, there's been a lot of us who've been talking about the potential of franchises coming back, and that should have been the biggest like point of contention, because
Amen.
like if you look at Activision, right? Forget about Blizzard for a minute. If you look at Activision, they come out with one game a year, one, and that's Call of Duty. All of their studios that used to make the Transformers games and Singularity and Tony Hawk and Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, they all make Call of Duty content now. They are Call of Duty support studios. And that is heartbreaking, right? Like, wouldn't we want them to be making their own games? Do we need a new Call of Duty every year? Because remember, this year they were going to do a premium expansion pack, which I saw a lot of excitement for. I was excited for it. And like, we don't need a new Call of Duty every year. Like, I think they would make far much more money if they diversified their portfolio. Again, Guitar Hero prints money, or at least used to print money. Don't do that Guitar Hero Live crap they tried in 2015, where they had the two rows of buttons. What were they thinking? We play.
Yeah, that was.
I don't want to learn the real guitar. I'm too lazy for that. I want to play Guitar Hero with my coloured buttons, and I want to play Monkey Wrench by Foo Fighters, because that was the best thing about Guitar Hero 2. But like, it opens up so many possibilities with these franchises. And in that interview Phil Spencer did today, it's on the official Xbox YouTube channel. Like, he wants the studios to be able to make whatever they want. And like, just think about that. You have Hasbro that wants the Call of Duty game, sorry, not Call of Duty games, Transformers games back on hardware, they want it in Game Pass. And then you have these studios which are capable of making their own games, but they're making bloody maps and probably like cosmetics for Call of Duty. It's like that's so much wasted potential, because if these developers move on to make their own games, and you just have one team and maybe a support studio making COD, like, COD isn't going away. COD's still going to make its ridiculous amount of money every year, where it literally prints money. But it's like, we should only be concerned about COD. We should be concerned about, again, the myriad of franchises that they have over there. Again, I keep bringing up Guitar Hero because I want that bloody plastic guitar back, and I want to be able to play songs, but we haven't had that for so long. And I feel like I always talk about the 360 generation because it's creativity, right? It was fun. All these games were so much fun, and now like the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 generation, to me, became extremely formulaic, right? Originality,
Hashtag same.
yeah, everything's the same. And I've mentioned this on the show before. Like, the only originality we see in the gaming space in general is through indie games. But on the 360 generation and the PS3, the 7th gen, there was so much creativity going on, and we just don't get that now. And I think, let those developers make whatever the hell they want. Maybe you have a different developer help with, Halo or Gears of War. Maybe they bring Hexen back, because I believe in a recent interview, Phil Spencer was wearing a Hexen shirt. And I know, Logan, you really want Hexen back.
Yeah, Hexen is one that absolutely should come back. Heretic, and then, as far as backwards compatibility, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, Wolfenstein '09, and Quake 4. Those were some games that had some entanglement issues with id and Rare, and Activision and Bethesda. Now you own all of them now. So license entanglement should not be an issue anymore. Like this BC drop everybody wants, those should absolutely all be in that because you own them all. There should be no problem anymore. So yeah, absolutely.
And you look at all the dormant franchises that like. Look, World of Warcraft is the biggest MMO on the planet, and it has controller support. Right, you can play the game on PC right now with a 360 controller or an Xbox One controller. Like, doesn't this seem like an obvious thing there? Right, put WoW on consoles. Like that thing would print money. It's just that there's so many different opportunities and avenues they can go through. Because again, it's like we've been saying for 20 months. It's not just about COD, right? It's about all the other crap that we can get. And I'd rather get Call of Duty and maybe 5 cool games a year from Activision than just one Call of Duty game with 45,000 maps. Call of Duty is going to be fine. And look, like I said before, creativity. Like Guitar Hero was so much fun, and because of Guitar Hero, we got all these other games. Rock Band came along because it created competition. Then you had DJ Hero, and I think because of Guitar Hero, there was a bongo game on the GameCube or something. Like we could have that
Donkey
back.
Kong, yeah.
Yeah, Donkey Kong. Like we could have all that stuff back again. Again, imagine if there was like two different, music franchises going back and forth like they used to be. But again, Activision, they screwed it up because they were coming out with maybe one or two different Guitar Heroes every year, where you had to just completely forget about your songs, and you had to use a new guitar and all that stuff. And they flood the market with like too many plastic guitars, too many aftermarket stuff, and it ruined the franchise. But if, like, again, I'm not gonna lie, I was mightily impressed with my own uh, business plan for how they could monetize Guitar Hero. You just need one guitar for the entire generation. I noticed I've been talking about Guitar Hero a lot, but I realized how much I want to play that again because
Hey, I do too. I have some of my favorite memories growing up in gaming is like you have a group of friends over, you play Guitar Hero Rock Band, you're jamming out to Halo 3 Mjolnir mix or the Top Gun anthem, and like there's, or there's, Freebird, there's all these classic songs of all these different genres you can play. And with now that you own Activision, Blizzard, King, Bethesda, all these studios, all these games, all these IP dating back to the 70s and 80s, even, you can, there's so many different songs and themes you can throw in there. And like you said, just have one guitar. Like another thing that killed that game was when Activision started getting kind of a bit, you know, put the cart before the horse, so to speak, and just kept putting out more and more of them. Like, okay, we need a Guitar Hero Metallica, we need a Guitar Hero 80s, we need a Guitar Hero this or this band or that band, instead of one big entry, a whole bunch of songs, and then you add more over time and like a map pack, so to speak. It just that was kind of the start of the end to me.
yeah, I remember back in the day when I think they made the Top Gun soundtrack or free, or it might have been just Danger Zone, or sorry, it was the Top
Yeah,
Gun
that
theme.
was awesome.
Yeah, like that they made that free, and I think the Guitar Hero, the Halo 3 song theme was like free on Xbox Live, and that was a big thing. People were talking about, like everyone was playing that, and plus with social media today, like I think people just love to talk about that stuff. Again, talking about Guitar Hero a lot, but that was such a fun game. It really was. It really was. I really want that to come back. And plus, rather than come out with like map packs for COD all the time, you could come out with like one expansion being Metallica, one expansion being AC/DC. Maybe like a synthwave pack. do a Taylor Swift pack, because those fans would literally pay for the development of an entire new console generation. Like,
Oh, no kidding. Swifties are real,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
You-
the Swifties would pay for an entire new Xbox generation of games and consoles. Like, do it, you know. Um, but there's just so much like potential there. And then look at like all the other dormant franchises. StarCraft. StarCraft has been like quiet for what, 12 years or something, and the only mention it gets online is when there's and like a sort of a esports competition, and even in esports, it's not the biggest thing anymore. I think it still is in South Korea, but like,
oh, Korea, it's huge.
yeah, um, like there's people that make millions off that over there, but why not put that on consoles? You know, I could see StarCraft working well on consoles. Make that third person like shooter game. I'm constantly port begging. What's not port begging? Let's call it IP begging. Um, like there's so much they could like. Look, everyone knows about StarCraft Ghosts, right? I had the original Xbox magazine with StarCraft Ghosts on the cover. I may have to try and
I
find it out.
did too, man.
Like
It's so good.
like there's so much like every time I talk about a third person shooter in StarCraft, 90% of the comments is StarCraft Ghosts, because people remember that stuff. We are scarred for life because it was taken away from us, just like Star Wars 1313. We
Yeah, I was
remember.
about to say it was the first one of those for me.
Yeah, and also another game from that generation. I think it was also Activision that was going to make. There was a first-person shooter Stargate game. Got cancelled on the original
Oh
Xbox.
man, that would have been sick.
Yeah. By the way, a bit of a tangent. I know about so many cancelled Stargate games. It haunts me. like, like I
Keeps you up at night.
yeah, like I love Stargate. I don't really talk about it much, but I love Stargate. But I could think of maybe 10 or 12 cancelled Stargate games.
Oh man, pour
Absolutely,
one out. That's
yeah,
awful.
terrible stuff. But yeah, back to StarCraft and all that. Like, I think like there's so much like people have been scared about like if Call of Duty is not going to be on PlayStation anymore, but like they've already confirmed it's going to be on a bunch of different streaming services. Ubisoft has the rights to basically sell the license for it to be on streaming services, and Nintendo's finally going to get Call of Duty again. Like, they haven't had Call of Duty, and I want to say since 2012 with Call of Duty Black Ops
Ghost
2.
was the one.
Oh yeah, Ghosts. Yeah, Ghosts of 2013. Like, it's been a long time. Like 10 years without Call of Duty. I don't have a Switch, but is there any military first-person shooter PvP game on the Switch?
Off the top of my head, no. But it's been a while since I've been on the eShop. But I don't remember a hardcore military shooter like a Call of Duty or a Battlefield on Switch. No.
Like whenever they put Call of Duty on I assume the Switch too. Like they're gonna make so much money off that, because again, I bet there's millions of people that only have a Switch. I'm pretty sure there's a large chunk of them that would like a military first person shooter. Next year's Call of Duty, I believe, is going to be Black Ops 4, or a new Black Ops game. So like that thing is going to be a bit massive. Like, I think there's so much excitement around this for like games coming back, potential. I'm looking forward to it. Like Phil Spencer seemed really enthusiastic about games coming back and developers being able to make whatever they want. And yeah, like Logan, I'll let you speak for it because I need to drink. But like, what are you looking forward to, and what are you wanting from the whole situation?
Oh man, if I can take the mic, I might take all day. But there's a lot. I've had 20 months to be thinking about this, so there's a lot I personally want to see with this. And just forgive me as we go into fever dreams of Activision Blizzard King Bliss, but like all the backwards compatibility options we can have, like the ones that they can finagle, like even if they have to make them disc only for like the Marvel or like a Blur or a Transformers games, like even if they have to be disc only, I would be cool with that. Like we have the King Kong movie, Peter Jackson one, and the game is actually really good. And it's BC. Not that many people know that, but it is BC. It's disc only though, because licensing and stuff. But it's a great game and it is playable if you own it. Like 50 Cent Blood in the Sand. That game has a cult acclaim. And it's BC but disc only because licensing. But they went ahead and got it done. So even if they had to be physical only, I'd love it if they could bring those back. And then obviously the trio I mentioned earlier, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, Wolfenstein '09, and Quake 4. Those are no brainers, no questions asked. Should be press a button, you're done. Just get those in there. And then you have the OG and 360 games, various spin offs and titles from Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. You own them completely. That should be no problem to put in there. I know Prototype 1 and 2 got remastered in a bundle thing, but maybe bring those back as well in case somebody didn't get that bundle thing. And then, Singularity, 100% needs to be in there. Give it a chance. It's really good. And there's so many other games. Like Gun was a really awesome 360 Western before Red Dead Redemption came out. And yes, it's dated, but it was a really good Neversoft title. RIP Neversoft, by the way. Hopefully they can resurrect them now that they own Activision. And Vicarious Visions. They need to come back too. But yeah, and then the Tony Hawk games, if you can get the music to work, bring those back. And then as far as resurrected franchises or new stuff, Guitar Hero, 100%, we've already covered that in depth. Singularity, Hexen, Heretic, StarCraft, port the StarCraft and Warcraft games to console and WoW. Port them to console, and then greenlight a new StarCraft, a StarCraft 3, and StarCraft spin-offs. Like bring back Ghost or make something similar. Or just some other type of game in that universe. The lore and characters are so rich and deep, you can easily make just a bajillion different ideas with it. And then same with Warcraft. Like there could be so many Warcraft Diablo type games. Like with those lore and universes, like you could make a Dark Souls type game in a Warcraft universe or whatever. Like
I want that now.
there's I mean, there's so much stuff. And then, Phil hinted that these studios can work with each other. And, he said, we have this IP vault that is daunting. And I'm proud and glad that he mentioned we have done an okay job with revisiting our titles. We haven't done a good or great job. We've done okay, and we need to do better. And they're going to revisit them, and they're going to give the studios freedom to do whatever they want. He's like, if they want to revisit an older title and go full on with it, I am all in on that. So that means a Toys for Bob, if they want to do a Crash Bandicoot 5 or a Spyro 4 or a Banjo remake or Conquer or mashup with all of the furry critters together, they can. And they have Xbox's blessing. This is just a perfect storm. Bring all these games back. Port things, make Xbox, PC, and mobile all interconnected with all these franchises, all the crossover potential. It's glorious. And the future is sky high. The idea of id being able to have their IPs back and, maybe a crossover with Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer, Treyarch, and 343 and Coalition, or id or whoever, being able to dabble in each other's work and do spin-offs and stuff. It's the sky is the limit, and I'm frankly just euphoric and ecstatic.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many possibilities to do. Even the new Call of Duty content has Diablo 4's Lilith.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, yeah, and like like with all the different IP they have across the board, like imagine like having to fight Master Chief in like a Call of Duty mode, just stuff like that, you know. While you were talking, I did a double check on something, and it turns out you can still buy Singularity on the 360. So I can't imagine the licensing being too difficult for that.
Yeah, and there are several original Xbox games. I've done a lot of research on BC. There's a bunch of OG titles that were Spyro or Crash that are still accessible, and then the 360 games we've mentioned. Like for the most part, I think they can make a batch if they want to. Like I'll just put it that way. I think they can make one if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning like have games backwards compatible that they don't have on the in the store to buy, and like you said, they do have them. Like I think the most that doesn't even make sense what I'm about to say, but the most licensed, I'm doing air quotes, game they have on the store that you can't buy is Lego Star Wars. Sorry, not Lego Star Wars, Lego Lord of the Rings. Um, that
Oh yes, I remember that one. Physical only.
yeah, it's you can play it as long as you have the disc, and again, I've got it, I've played it, plays great, and that is a fantastic Lego game by the way. Um, but like I can't imagine many games like being like harder to sort out than that because it has all the audio basically from the three films. So like I don't think it's like that impossible. And while I was speaking about BC, my next video, which will hopefully be out tomorrow, will be about some backwards compatible stuff. Not giving too much
Wink,
away.
wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah,
Yes.
which I've been meaning to get done for 6 months, but it's almost done. Excuse me. But yeah, the possibilities are endless, man. And I think like a lot of the news today has been about Call of Duty. Phil Spencer had a long interview where he was answering a bunch of questions, and the main headline is console parity for Call of Duty, right? And that's great, right? Everyone's going to be playing the same game. The game's also going to Switch. I'm just going to say Switch 2. But you're not going to have a week early beta access on PlayStation anymore. You're not going to have exclusive skins or any of that stuff. Like when we buy Call of Duty, it's all going to be the same, unless your console can do like lower or higher resolutions or whatever. Like we played the same content, and I think that's great. But I think the biggest takeaway from what Phil Spencer was talking about today isn't bloody Call of Duty. It's that developers can make what they want. Like you said, go back. Like Microsoft's never been good at making sequels to games that didn't do too well or revisit an IP, but now they can. They have so many developers that they can do that. They have studios that are unique, well, not unique, but like have the ability to port games from older generations. Like they have a lot of developers now, and I think that's exciting because remember, if you go back to 2015 or something, they had 5 studios, right? They had 343, they had the Coalition, they had Rare, Turn 10, and Lionhead. And well, they got rid of Lionhead. And then they got Mojang, but we're gonna separate them because they just do Minecraft. But like now they have like what 35 studios, a lot of which
And not including support,
yeah,
which they got an obscene amount with this deal.
and like they could really do anything, and I think that's the big takeaway. It's like it's more games, and like look, Call of Duty is going to be on everything. But I think like titles like I'll just keep mentioning it, Singularity 2, right? I think titles like that would be exclusive to Xbox, but I think things like Crash Bandicoot 5 or something like that. I think that would end up being on everything. Although like you said, I think Toys for Bob making a Banjo Kazooie game that just makes too much sense, like to not do. So yeah, I think normally in the past there's been a section where either one of us are ranting because there's always some bullcrap or something. But like the past few weeks, it's been some really good news for Xbox. Like if you're an Xbox owner, the next few years ahead are bloody insane. I'm trying not to swear because last time we got age gated. But like the future's bright, and I think that like if you only play Call of Duty, you're gonna have the option to play it in Game Pass in the future. And speaking of Game Pass, it looks like Blizzard and other Activision games are gonna come to Game Pass in 2024. Now, I saw a lot of people that were disappointed by this, but if you really think about it, we are over halfway through October. It's almost 2024. You know, I do think that the games are going to arrive in batches. It's not going to be like Bethesda where we just woke up one day and there was like 50,000 games added. It's going to take time. But then again, you have to look at, I think every Call of Duty since 2015 has been marketed with PlayStation. So we don't know what stipulations they have in their contracts for how many years they can have like games not being in an Xbox subscription. Although I do think it'll only be in the past 2 or 3. But it's a great time to be an Xbox fan. And I think that if you look back at the early Xbox One generation, like Xbox fans, there was no roadmap, right? We didn't know what games were coming. We didn't know what IPs were being worked on. Xbox didn't have many IP that they thought was valuable enough to make games for. But you look now, they have so many development studios with so many different teams. Like you look at Obsidian, they make like 5 games at a time and they're all great. And it's such a big step from what they used to be like. Because again, I've said this before a million times. Xbox never had a roadmap before. Ever. Right? When they were working with second-party studios and third-party studios to make Crackdown and Scalebound and Recon and all that stuff. Like, they were hands-off, basically had no say, and if anything went wrong, they would take the blowback for it. So if Crackdown wasn't the game that the developers of Crackdown promised, Microsoft took the heat. If Scalebound was performing bad on stage, Microsoft took the heat. When Scalebound was cancelled, Microsoft took the heat. And then, funny enough, 5 years later, Platinum Games came out and said, actually, no, it was our fault. But now they have all these internal studios making content, which can just make whatever the hell they want. And it's like, that's such a good place to be right now for an Xbox fan because there is a roadmap. There's 4 titles announced for next year. Personally, I do believe the roadmap we saw for Bethesda games, I do think Indiana Jones is going to be next year. I do think Fallout, either Fallout or Oblivion is going to be next year, as well as, and put this out there, I'm 99% positive that Indiana Jones and Clockwork Revolution come out next year.
Wow, that's a killer year.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I could be wrong, but as of right now, they have 4 games announced. They have Flight Sim 2024, which is the activity-based game. They have Towerborn, Hellblade 2, and Avowed. Already, that's more of a roadmap than Xbox has ever had, right? So the future's bright, and honestly, I can't wait. And the next year, especially, is going to be really interesting because that's when studios can start being free to do what they want. Because again, next year's Call of Duty, it's going to be a bit different. I don't know, Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we close out the show?
Yeah, just a few last musings. Like another key point on the older titles that Phil mentioned today was that with Game Pass, it's kind of like that rising tide lifts everything and kind of a barrier to protect things. And he mentioned that Game Pass would allow them to, have 2 or 3 titles they could revisit every year, like for older games, for like ports or remasters, and then he said as a way to gauge if there's an audience for them. So it sounds like going forward they have an idea of maybe kind of like doing a night dive type thing or whatever, to where it's like, okay, we've got some titles from our vault. Let's grab a handful out of a hat, remaster and port them, and see if they stick in Game Pass. And if people are really engaged and like them, then we know, hey, there's an audience for this and we should revisit it. And if not, then hey, the dozens of us that are out there can enjoy that title in Game Pass. So I thought that was a really good point as well.
You've got a good point, because if you look at 2023, like the games that were delayed from last year, but the games that were originally meant to come out this year was Starfield, Redfall, Forza, and the Age of Empires games, right? But if you look at the games that have came out, Quake 1 and 2 Remastered came out of nowhere, which they weren't advertised. The GoldenEye port came out, and also a new game via Hi-Fi Rush. Like, that's 4 games that came out that we weren't told about. So you mentioned that and how they can have. The thing is, people call PlayStation the remaster station or remake station, whatever they want. They call them that because it almost seems like if they don't have their big tentpole game, they just rely on releasing a remaster that time, right? Whereas I think like all these companies, they should be releasing their big titles and release something like a remaster or something as a an additional game, right? Like, don't rely only on those remasters or only on those remakes. And I think Microsoft to the point now where they can do both. They can have their big games and also revisit titles. So, like, yeah, you're right. Phil Spencer did mention that. I think it's a good time. I think the next year especially is going to be really interesting. And as I saw, Pyro and Madden Chat mentioned, call it Steampunk 1877. Kind of hope they call it that as well. But yeah. Anyway, Logan, have you got anything to say before we close it out?
Oh, just that I forgot on the Bethesda leak that the Ghostwire Tokyo 2 and then Doom Year Zero and Dishonored 3. Like all 3 of those I'd be euphoric for, and I'm super stoked for those. Hope they happen. And like the timelines on those are obviously dated because that was pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Like the list was from an email or documents from 2020, like early 2020 before everything hit the fan, so to speak. So, obviously Elder Scrolls 6 is not coming out next year. Like that's just not happening. So, take it with a grain of salt, the release dates on those. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think like the past few years, everything got screwed up. Time will tell. But hey, the roadmap already looks great. I want to say before we close out the show, everyone in chat currently is being great. Outside of, I honestly think Xbox owns Activision Blizzard just scared some people and thought, let's go crazy, why not? But yeah, everyone else has been great in chat. We'll be back the same time next week, and I do have a video dropping either tomorrow or Thursday, depends on when it gets finished. But if you like Activision games, and you like Blizzard games, and Xbox 360 games, you might like this video. Anyway, we'll be back again next week and all that stuff. Again, everyone in chat's been awesome. We are out, and by the way, all of our socials are in the description down below where we tweet pretty much all the time. Anyway, we are off. Peace, everybody.